It wasn't a memo from HR or a hushed side meeting. It was a microphone gripped in the polished hands of our new COO, Marcus Reed, as he stood at the heart of Nexlify's global launch event. 147 employees froze. Some glanced my way, their eyes flickering with unease. Others stared at their hands, pretending this wasn't unfolding in real time. Marcus's voice was smooth, almost too perfect, like a script rehearsed to cut deep. We thank her for her years of service, but leadership must evolve. Please surrender your badge. Silence swallowed the room. My badge, still pinned to my blazer, flashed red on the massive screen behind me. With one tap, Marcus had erased my access, nullified my credentials, and severed 19 years of my life. I didn't flinch, not out of shock, but restraint. I had built everything they were launching today. LinkSphere, the global backbone system, was my creation, my architecture, my security protocols, my sleepless nights. For 6 years, I'd crafted its framework, stress-tested every node for 6 months, and barely slept 4 hours a night for the last 6 days to ensure it was deployment-ready. I reached for my badge, but first, I unhooked the small walnut-colored USB drive dangling from its lanyard. My fingers traced the engraved words, etched by my son 5 years ago, "Build what they can't steal." Back then, I believed loyalty ran both ways. The room stayed deathly quiet. Even the executive assistant who once brought me peppermint tea during late-night coding sessions averted her gaze. Marcus's smile widened, smug, as if he'd won. He didn't know the USB in my palm held the final authentication token, the one they'd need to complete the launch. I set the badge on the table, gave a single nod to the team I'd led for years, and walked out. My heels struck the concrete floor like gunfire. No goodbyes. No gratitude. Just silence thick enough to choke on. Outside the glass doors, I whispered to myself, "You'll need my signature for that." The door clicked shut, muffling Marcus's voice and the stunned hush of the conference room. The sun was too bright for the numbness in my bones. I stood in the corridor, staring at my now useless badge, its red strip blinking with finality. 19 years erased. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I breathed in the sterile air of the 12th floor, reminding myself I'd seen Nexlify when it was just 4 dreamers coding on duct-taped servers in a co-working space with a broken coffee machine. Back then, I was a systems analyst, praised when the system didn't crash today. I wrote my first infrastructure script after a 16-hour shift, sleeping beside the server rack with a granola bar in one hand and bug reports in the other. In 2009, I caught a permissions flaw 6 hours before it could leak a global client's data, saving Nexlify from a lawsuit that would have crushed us. In 2015, a back-end misfire corrupted our entire client database. The CTO panicked. Legal panicked. I didn't. I wrote a recovery script from scratch, restoring 98% of the data in 48 hours. In 2020, while the world paused for Thanksgiving, I stopped a ransomware attack that had slipped past 3 security layers. The final firewall? A rule I'd written weeks earlier, just in case. No one remembers those moments. They remember the launch parties I wasn't invited to. I missed my son's college graduation for that 2015 rollback, watching him in his cap and gown via a shaky FaceTime call from a server room, coffee stains on my shirt. "I'm proud of you," I whispered through a faltering connection. "It's okay, Mom," he said. "I know your work matters." I promised to be there for his next milestone, but there was always another crisis, another outage, another deployment. Now, the system I'd sacrificed everything for had become my executioner. Marcus Reed didn't see the code. He saw budget lines. 6 months ago, he arrived with polished shoes and slide decks dripping with buzzwords, vowing to modernize Nexlify. He called LinkSphere, my security-first global framework, a relic of outdated paranoia. In a meeting 2 weeks ago, he smirked, "We need systems that scale with agility, not Cold War bunkers." He'd never fought off a cyber attack or cleaned up after a contractor forgot to encrypt data. To him, my legacy wasn't complex, it was inconvenient. He wanted low-code, centralized, controllable. In my car, I skimmed my inbox, ignoring deactivation notices until one subject line stopped me cold. Urgent. Deployment license, final term. It was from legal, flagged weeks ago, unanswered. Inside, a single paragraph. For Clause 9.3, global deployment license expires July 16th at 11:47 a.m. unless dual authentication is verified by the original architect and acting COO. My breath stilled. They fired me at 11:03 a.m. The system needed my signature by 11:47 a.m., and I was no longer there to give it. I glanced at the USB on the passenger seat, my son's words glinting in the sunlight. Build what they can't steal. They didn't just fire me, they abandoned the only key to their launch. The email glowed on my phone. 11:47 a.m., the final gate only I could unlock. While LinkSphere waited in silent pause, Marcus was likely upstairs, rehearsing sound bites, claiming credit for my work. He'd been at Nexlify barely 6 months, yet he'd bulldozed departments, fast-tracked his favorites, and rebranded everything as transformational. He was a storm in a tailored suit, what executives called a culture shift, and we called chaos. I met him once. He shook my hand and said, "You must be the legendary Elena, building mazes only you can solve." I smiled politely, not knowing it wasn't praise, it was a warning. Marcus didn't want systems that protected Nexlify. He wanted systems he could control. His mission was clear: erase complexity, erase history, erase people like me. Senior engineers were reassigned. Veteran project leads were sidelined into powerless advisory roles. He hired a new tech team, young, polished, some still in grad school. He called them the future. In a server load balancing meeting, he cut me off mid-sentence. "Elena, no offense, but we're speeding things up, not burying them in Stone Age encryption." He laughed. A few others did too. "You're a brilliant bottleneck," he said, "but a bottleneck nonetheless." The word stung, not because it was true, but because it was lazy. He didn't care why LinkSphere had redundancy. He didn't grasp what those layers prevented. He wanted speed, simplicity, and a system that didn't need a woman in her 50s to sign off. 2 weeks later, I saw a draft press release for Tech Trend Weekly. COO Marcus Reed leads collaborative innovation to launch LinkSphere. No mention of me. No nod to the 6 years I spent designing its structure, or the recovery protocol I wrote on a red-eye flight in 2021. The diagrams were oversimplified, the language vague, but accuracy wasn't the goal, ownership was. Marcus had booked a podcast, Disruptors Unplugged, boasting, "We're telling the story behind LinkSphere." People love a reinvention tale. Reinvention. As if my work at home, I tried accessing the latest deployment logs. Access denied. No warning, just a cold, blinking message. Architecture logs, security protocols. Every door I'd once unlocked was barred. They hadn't just fired me, they'd erased me. I sat in my kitchen, lit only by dim afternoon light filtering through half-drawn blinds. The air was heavy, the silence heavier. I messaged colleagues on Slack, people I'd mentored, debugged with, laughed with. No replies. Some hadn't read my messages, others had, and chose silence. Amira, my closest peer, and I had built load balancing protocols over 28 pots of coffee. I texted her, *, just checking in. Hope you're well. * 2 hours later, her LinkedIn profile picture updated. Not blocked, just invisible. This wasn't paranoia, it was procedure. I was being surgically removed from Nexlify, like a wound they didn't want to reopen. But who held final authentication control? I messaged Max Garvin, a second-year intern I'd mentored. Bright, curious, unpolished. He'd helped me simulate a token bridge for LinkSphere. "Max, do you still have read access to deployments?" Quiet favor, confirm who has final override on LinkSphere. He replied in 5 minutes. Give me 15. My heart beat harder than it should. Part of me hoped the override was reassigned, that my last tie to Nexlify was cut. Then his message came. Found something weird. He attached a screenshot. There it was, *COO access key, Marcus Reed. System architect override, Elena Vostar. No backups, no alternates, just me. Yours is still active, Max added. * biometric registered in core code. If you're out, they're locked, *. I leaned back, staring at the screen. Marcus hadn't stripped my token, likely didn't know how or assumed it was handled. They'd rushed me out the door, forgetting I was the lock. "Don't share this," I typed. "Thanks, Max. You've done more than you know." He sent a thumbs up. "Glad to help." It wasn't nothing, it was everything. They'd built invisible walls around me, but they forgot the one wall no HR policy could erase: me. Seeing my name as the sole architect with override rights, I knew I wasn't out, not yet. I powered up my secure home terminal, a relic from the pandemic. My hands moved with precision, navigating a backdoor port only 3 people knew existed. 2 were gone. I was the third. The system didn't flinch, no flags, no alerts. It welcomed me like nothing had changed. My cursor hovered over LinkSphere's final execution layer, the part requiring my biometric signature. The interface blinked, dormant, waiting. Without my sign-off, the launch wouldn't proceed. This wasn't sabotage, it was design. I'd built failsafes to ensure no one could bypass the final lock without my key. They never asked for it. They assumed the system would just work. I didn't touch the launch command. I didn't override anything. I let it sit. Sometimes, the most powerful move is no move at all. But silence wasn't enough. If this became a legal fight, I'd need proof I hadn't tampered. I extracted logs, system activity, permissions, timestamps, compressed them into an encrypted zip, and backed them up offline. I emailed a copy to myself. Subject: System integrity snapshot for legal reference. Clean, undeniable. I wasn't setting a trap, I was preserving truth. A ping broke the quiet. Max again. Found something weird in legal archive. He attached a PDF, dated April 2019, Authentication Ownership Clause, Final Deployment Protocol. I read it 3 times. Asterisk: in the event of global rollout, final phase authentication must be executed by the originating system architect, defined as the individual who authored 80% or more of the core protocol. This authentication is non-transferable unless revoked in writing. Asterisk: my name, Elena Voss, was inked below, signed as senior infrastructure architect. I'd pushed for that clause, thinking it a formality. It wasn't. Marcus couldn't override it, not without my written consent, which I hadn't given. I typed to Max, "Keep that file. Don't share it. Trust your instincts." He replied with a thumbs up, "Always do." I smiled for the first time in days. This wasn't about revenge, it was about principle, about systems no ego could bend. I held the USB, its engraved words grounding me, "Build what they can't steal." They hadn't, because I hadn't let them. I sat in my car across from Nexlify's headquarters, engine off, watching Marcus step into the spotlight like he'd invented the internet. The event hall glowed with theatrical lighting, folding chairs packed with eager attendees. Cameras flashed, applause roared. Champagne glasses clinked, half drained by interns. The glass facade was plastered with sleek logos and buzzwords. Everything was louder, brighter, emptier. Marcus took the mic, his voice dripping with false ease. Nexlify 2.0 begins today. We've cleared the clutter, rebuilt our backbone, and launched a system worthy of the future. Clutter. That was me, I supposed, and every line of code I'd written to protect his future. I leaned back, sunlight spilling across my lap. My work was being unveiled without me, or so they thought. Marcus clicked through slides, my graphs, my dashboards, now stripped of nuance, polished into sterile corporate art. "This is what true collaboration looks like," he said. Collaboration. The word cut deeper than clutter. There was no collaboration when I coded failsafes at 2 a.m. or rebuilt recovery protocols during a 2021 blizzard. No team effort when I missed my son's birthday for a crashed node. No one claps for caution at press events. I turned the USB in my fingers, its wooden casing warm. Build what they can't steal. They had the system's body, not its soul, and the soul needed my permission to breathe. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Asterisk: you're being watched. Get ready, asterisk, my chest tightened. I scanned the parking garage empty, save for a delivery van 2 levels up. The message vanished, programmed to expire. Someone knew I held the key, and they wanted me to know they were watching. I saved a screenshot, then started the car. Let them celebrate. The system was still waiting for me. At home, The gray dawn crept in, heavy and undecided. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, laptop open, cursor blinking in an empty email draft. *2, board at nextlify.com. Subject, launch risk warning star. I typed, the system has not passed final phase authentication. Global deployment is frozen. Verify authorization chain before proceeding. Precise, factual, emotionless. But I stopped. They'd already decided not to listen. 6 months ago, I'd warned the board about dismantling safety nets. Marcus laughed. A young board member cut me off. We need speed, not legacy control. Everyone clapped. No one asked the cost. I deleted the draft. Not out of spite, out of clarity. They'd uninvited me from the conversation. I wasn't obligated to save them. The USB sat beside my cold coffee, its words a quiet anchor, build what they can't steal. I plugged it in. A folder opened, LinkSphere core. It held everything: compliance diagrams, the 2019 agreement, the override map outlining what happened without my signature, an indefinite wait state. No crash, no leak, just stillness. I'd built it that way because some mistakes should never go live. The clock read 5:58 a.m. They had until 11:47 a.m. before the system rolled back. I poured fresh coffee and waited. The seconds wound tighter, like a spring coiling. At 11:03 a.m., Marcus had announced my termination, his voice casual, like reading a weather report. Effective immediately, Elena Voss is no longer with Nextlify. We thank her for her service. The HR rep extended her hand, avoiding my eyes. I dropped my badge with a faint click, slipped the USB into my pocket, and walked out, my heels echoing like a countdown. A chime rang from the dashboard as I reached the exit. A single line flickered. *Ocane02 signature mismatch detected. Queued for hold state star. No one noticed. Marcus was already shaking hands, cameras rolling, celebration in full swing. But I saw it. The system saw me. That was enough. At 11:24 a.m., my private monitoring interface flickered to life. The launch had begun, or tried to. Initiating phase 3 global sync. Nodes lit up. Tokyo green, Dublin green, Sao Paulo green. Then they froze. Green turned amber, then flashed error prompts. Tokyo, timed out waiting for handshake. Frankfurt, sync incomplete. New York, authorization interrupted. I didn't blink. I hadn't touched a thing. The system was simply doing what I'd designed, waiting for me. A root diagnostic prompt appeared. Authorization key 2 missing. Required signature, Elena Voss not found star. Across the world, engineers were likely scrambling, checking cables, calling vendors. There was no bug, just my absence. The launch wasn't crashing, it was paused, exactly as I'd intended in 2019 when I insisted on that final layer of protection. I imagined the chaos in Nextlify's event hall. Marcus's smile fading, executives pacing, interns whispering. The 44-minute countdown had become a silent standoff. This wasn't revenge, it was responsibility. You don't build a $960 million system and leave the keys lying around. You don't entrust it to people who call caution clutter. At 11:39 a.m., Nextlify's command center was a pressure cooker. The countdown screen read 8 minutes remaining, stuck on standby. Marcus's jaw was locked, his arms crossed too tightly. Why are we still in pre-sync? He snapped. The tech lead hesitated. It's not frozen, sir. It's waiting. The word landed like a blade. Waiting for what? Marcus demanded. The general counsel stepped forward, tablet in hand, scrolling frantically. Section 9.3 of the infrastructure license. Final launch requires dual authentication, COO and system architect. Marcus stared. We signed off on that. Can we override? She shook her head. It's hard-coded. Biometric. The screen flashed. Authorization key 2 missing. Elena Voss not found star. Silence suffocated the room. You're saying the system's held hostage by someone we fired? Marcus's voice cracked. No one answered. He grabbed a phone, his whisper sharp with desperation. Across the city, My phone buzzed on my balcony. An audio file from Max Marcus's voice played. We don't need Elena. She's obsolete. Dead weight. The recording ended. I felt no rage, just stillness. Max hadn't commented, he didn't need to. His choice to send it said everything. At 11:47 a.m., every global deployment screen went dark. Asterisk license expired. Code L4747X. Global deployment cancelled. Asterisk Marcus shouted. Restart it. We've got backups. The system admin's voice was flat. The biometric signature was hers. Whispers erupted. Asterisk Zurich's pulling the deal. Dubai wants a security review. Asterisk Legal held up the 2019 clause. Termination of architect triggers automatic lockout unless resigned by the creator. It was embedded in the patent. They needed my consent. In my apartment, shaded by sycamores, my screen went black. The system had timed out, self-archived, waiting for my key. An email arrived from board@nexlify.com. Subject, urgent return request, Elena. It acknowledged strategic missteps and offered to compensate appropriately. No apology, just desperation in polite prose. I didn't reply. I slid my phone into a drawer and sipped chamomile tea. By 2 p.m., Marcus was summoned to an emergency board session. He left pale, clutching an envelope. A press release announced his administrative leave. Max texted, "Your silence is louder than anything." I didn't respond. I stood by my window, watching the wind ripple through the trees. They'd called me redundant, but my foresight, my fail-safes, had stopped them cold. At 11:47 a.m., I didn't raise my voice. I let the code speak. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest answer. I moved through the crowded train station like a shadow, weightless, unnoticed. No badge, no boardroom pass, just my satchel and the USB worm in my palm. Build what they can't steal. My son had carved those words when LinkSphere was just code and dreams. I took the escalator to a tech hub near Union Square, a modest conference of engineers and ethicists who believe technology should serve, not control. At 12:30 p.m., I plugged in the USB and projected my screen. The crowd hushed. My name is Elena Voss. 19 years ago, I began building LinkSphere, a secure integration system. Today, I'm releasing LinkSphere M as an open framework for ethical deployment. I clicked, revealing the source code. But it comes with a covenant: transparent data use, inviolable user consent, zero tolerance for surveillance. Violate it and your license is revoked. The gate remains mine. A voice from the back. What about Nexlify? I answered, calm and clear. They no longer meet the threshold, technically or ethically. That afternoon, Nexlify's CTO applied for LinkSphere M access. Denied. They hadn't signed the covenant. 3 days later, Arctis Systems invited me to re-engineer their infrastructure as senior strategic advisor on my terms. I asked one question: did you sign the covenant? Their reply: we did yesterday. I walked past Nexlify's glassy headquarters that week, its lights blinding but hollow. I didn't stop. At a cafe, my son waited, 2 cups of tea steaming. He grinned. You did it, didn't you? I nodded, setting the USB beside his cup. It's not about building systems anymore, I said. It's about building boundaries. He closed my hand over the USB. Some things still belong to you. For 19 years, I gave Nexlify everything: my time, my talent, my family moments. In 44 minutes, they tried to erase me. But they forgot. No one can revoke the power of knowing your worth. They can take your title, your desk, but never the truth you built. If you've been underestimated or made invisible, know this: your silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's a boundary being drawn. If this story resonates, share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Like, share, and subscribe for more raw, powerful journeys. The quietest ones often rewrite the ending.